welcome to My Voice is Half Tourette's, and that's why I'm turning mental illness into mental skillness. My name is Dan Zarin. Let's get started here. So today's episode is brought to you by Gamesless Studio, where we are recording The Secret Cellar, Iceland's first and only comedy club, and Smári's Volcano Sauce is the greatest hot sauces I've ever had in my entire life. But joining me today are two absolutely incredible people, and I have so much prepared for this episode, so I'm going to try to get through this quickly. Let's welcome my co-host, Stefnir Benedictson.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm excited.
Yeah. And this is going to be a really cool episode because, like our guest, you have bipolar disorder. So
Sure.
I'm the squeaky one. You're the one that can relate to everything that he's saying. I'll just relate to the comedy. But let's just get straight to the guest because he's an absolutely incredible comedian, beatboxer. He's a coach, performer, producer. He did an absolutely incredible TED Talk called On Being Crazy Enough, which explores the bipolar spectrum. So let's just bring him on. Joshua Walters.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the show. I understand this is your first interaction with the country of Iceland.
Well, I've had ideas of visiting Iceland or there are some artist retreats that happen in Iceland where I was like, maybe I can go out and do it, but no one's actually contacted me from Iceland. So I was excited to get that email, from Iceland.
Right. And then I ruined it by being from the States.
Well, you could always put on some sort of accent. I mean, you could fake it if you wanted to.
He shouldn't. He always sounds Italian when he tries.
No, this happens in every single episode. I bring on the Icelandic accent.
Yeah, it hurts the ear.
It hurts the ear. I think the first episode I did that was with Carmela Torini, who was on episode 6, and she's Icelandic, and I did that accent, and she just like waits for like a second and then goes, "I want to rip your beard off and just kill you." So apparently it's either really good or it's just so bad that Icelanders hate me. But Josh, welcome. How are things going with you? I'm not going to say how are you enjoying the pandemic. That doesn't seem appropriate. But how are things going for you since the pandemic's been going?
Things have been going good. One of the things that happens when you're in this state and when you're with these limitations is you kind of like tighten down your wellness priorities and your wellness routine, and you really learn what's important to you, and also like what things you can't and cannot get away with. If you live by yourself, maybe you can be a little more messy, but maybe that like daily shower is a must, or you can't function in the afternoon or whatever it is. You learn those things and you test those boundaries, and there's been some testing moments for me. But it's actually made me a little more astute of exactly what I need and exactly, what's the best routine for me to get through each day, each week,
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because in the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, everyone was just like, "Oh, this is good. We'll have lockdowns. I'll get so much work done." Mm-hmm. All the comedians are like, "We'll write our new special. We'll get everything done." And then it gets to like a year later, and we're like, we didn't do anything, did we?"
Yeah. You need those other people around to keep you going, and those supporters and kind of those collaborators. That in-person collaboration is always kind of like. It's been missing, but it's really important to get the ideas going,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
We as comedians maybe seem to be a little needy attention seekers, and I think that's a little true because I need my attention now.
Yeah. Everyone needs some attention. Everyone needs some attention. Yeah.
But one thing I kind of wanted to start off with the topic of talking about you. I wanted to start off with the beatboxing because
right off top. Icelandic. They want the beatbox.
Oh hell yeah. Just straight off I mean, how did you get like into beatboxing in the beginning? And like when it comes to learning it, is it more than just boots and cats over and over again to start?
It is boots and cats in the beginning, but for me it was like a high school homies, around the lunchtime circle of Cypher, and I had a group of guys that were doing it, and then right after I graduated, there was this show that that happened in San Francisco that was called the Vow Movement, and it was just dedicated to beatboxing. It was just like 4 hours of beatbox, and it was like beatboxers from all over the West Coast and from all over the States came out for this one showcase. And
Wow.
I started as like a doorman and then I worked up to host and then producer. But it was a bunch of guys that, maybe they could have done something else with their time, but we came together and we really bonded around beatboxing. And it was a monthly showcase, and we did it for 5 or 6 years. We did this showcase in San Francisco, and it was really cool. It was really cool. Some of the guys, they went out to Europe actually and participated in the first international beatbox competition. So we sent representatives to Europe as the American representatives from our little crew.
Oh, cool. Where in Europe was that?
I think it was somewhere in Germany. I didn't go, but I think it was somewhere in Germany. But there's the most beatbox. I think the most beatboxers are actually from Europe at this point.
Yeah. Well, there is an Icelandic beatboxer, and for the life of me, I can't recall his name at the moment. But he moved to Norway, and he was saying, yeah, it's just astounding how big, like even just in the past few years, how big it's gotten in various parts of Europe.
Yeah. With thanks to the internet, like everything else, it's like you get your tutorial, you get your nerdy lesson, and then you kind of go as wild with it as you want to. And when we were doing it, we started this group back in like 2003, and the internet was without YouTube or without social media, and so we built a website and we had email, but it was before kind of this, for like a global connection,
Right?
And that first international competition was in 2004 or 2005, and so it was kind of the beginning of people kind of coming together from all over.
And did you kind of just was it kind of just like you just jumped right into it and learned more through the experience of doing it over and over again, or did you have various exercises for working on different parts of it?
Well, like I was saying in the beginning, that collaboration and that being around other artists was a huge part of learning, because we had guys that were veteran theater, musician, rapper, performers that were, in their 40s. And then we had guys who were like us, who were in our teens. And we kind of, we had the whole spectrum of different performers learning from each other, in a cipher, a circle together. And also, the showcase, when we each got to do our 5 or 6 minutes solo, we would learn a lot of techniques from each person's personal experience, and what they were bringing to it. So it's that collaboration was really, really fun, and to be in that group,
Yeah, and because you've also done, like you do like a bit of like spoken word type stuff as well. Did that stem from the beatboxing, like kind of hip hop background, or did that come kind of separate?
Well, it actually, like, it went in conjunction around the same time, like maybe beatbox, I was around 18 or 19, and then spoken word happened around that time, 19, 20. So it was all around the same time. And I would go to the beatbox shows and do spoken word poetry. I was the poet at the beatbox shows. And then at the poetry shows, I was the beatbox guy. So I always did something that was not happening, what they needed. I did the other thing. So they knew me as the guy who was like a little bit of special, that was a little bit different with whatever show it was. And, a lot of those guys, would blend, I would kind of, blend those genres, bring other people back and forth, and those little niche performance scenes in the Bay Area.
Right.
So
I can see how those things are connected, because spoken word is most of the time very rhythmic, and you sort of, right? So it feels a little bit like verbal beatboxing, doesn't it?
Yeah. And my first spoken words were really like raps. They were like raps without a beat,
Right.
And then the speeding up and slowing down, it is rhythmic. And then the funny element, not all spoken word artists are funny, but that was something that I was drawn to immediately, that I could have an audience and I can do like poems that were funny. And so that was another added element of being different in those scenes.
And is that how you sort of crossed over to being a comedian, or?
Yeah.
That's how that started.
It started mostly with poetry, doing poetry, and then it kind of crossed over to more storytelling. Like there's a storytelling scene or storytelling shows that were really big for radio productions that would do full scale. You'd be in front of a band and you'd be in front of a large, very large theater. And that was with this group called Snap Judgment, which is this radio storytelling, NPR radio storytelling. And so that was kind of all around the same time I was experimenting with more stand-up, and then really all those elements kind of come back to theater because I was a theater kid growing up. So, eventually when it was time to put my one-man show together, I was in a theater again. I just was writing my own material and doing some beatbox looping and a little bit of movement and some weird stuff to freak the audience out, just weird stuff.
Excellent.
Well, and kind of to jump in and to kind of, one of the big topics of this episode, since you brought up, with school and theater and all of that stuff. Now I understand, like you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder when you were 16. Was that while you were going through theater school?
Yeah, and my high school was a magnet. Was an arts magnet school called School of the Arts, again in San Francisco, and that had all the different types of artists and artist disciplines. There was dance, there was music, visual arts, film, whatever your discipline was, and it was a pre-professional program to get kids up and running in their field, even before college, even before going out on their own, to get them the skills from working artists in the area. And so, my discipline was theater, focused on playwriting, directing, movement. We did Shakespeare. We did a bunch of things. And it wasn't really like a traditional theater program where you do a bunch of plays. Every year there's so many plays. It wasn't really focused on product, like we got to do the school play. It was more about process, and it was more about these small workshops, getting your skills up, getting your, really looking at your skills in the art of theater. And so, that happened. That all happened in theater class, in the theater world.
Wow.
Being too theatrical, as they say.
well, actually, I mean that was something I was going to ask, because like when I was watching videos of you talking about this and talking about the fact that this happened while you were going through theater training and all of that stuff, you were talking about the manic episode that you had where you like in your TED talk that I'll talk about in a bit, you talked about the fact that you believed that you were Jesus. And, And with, with Tourette syndrome, one of the things that Tourettic people have to go through is, everyone thinking we're just acting out or we just want attention. But you were literally going to school, like learning, to be in theater. And then you went through a manic episode. Did you have issues with people thinking you were just pretending?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a big part of my writing, is that madness is sort of a performance, but you may not know you're performing is the thing, and a lot of my work focuses on, as a writer and as a storyteller, is kind of like, okay, you got your four elements of theater. You have your producer at the top, your director, your writer, and your actor. And those are all different elements of what you can experience in a manic episode, but you may not know who's the writer, who's writing your script, who's coming through you, who's delivering these lines. Maybe you're sure you're the actor, but like who's writing the lines?
Right.
And so there's a lot of metaphors that I use in the theatrical mode, in describing madness. It's like you have these ideas. Well, where are they from? Or where is your inspiration from? Or when someone pops in your head randomly, someone you haven't seen in 10 years, and you're like, oh, I gotta reach out to that person. You just have to. Where's that from? Where's that idea from? That's all part of Yeah, it's all part of madness. It's all part of having those creative ideas and being a creative, you know?
And I love your take on like with like referring to the mad ones instead of the mentally ill or, you know, the mentally sick or things like that. Because you, like, I was watching an interview where you were talking about the fact that like illness has kind of like this negative stigma to it, where it kind of makes it kind of feels like it's downgrading the person, whereas mad ones can be, you know, a whole spectrum.
Yeah. And I use that term mad one really openly. I champion the term mad one. I'm a advocate for mad one. You know, and so, yeah, because when you go into a session, you know, with the doctor and they give you this label, this diagnosis, you kind of have two ways you can go on it. You can either really identify with it and wear it on your sleeve and tell everyone, or you could be like, that's not me. I don't buy into that label. Mm-hmm. Just like when someone calls you a name and they're like, hey, you person, you know, and you can say, yeah, that's me. I'm that person. Or you could say, no, that's your opinion and I don't believe in that. So Mad Ones is kind of like all the labels without being any of the labels, you know?
I have like two categories of people. There's the crazies and the normies. And I'm definitely not a normie, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think like Mad One could be a nicer way of saying you're crazy. I think it could be interpreted as that. Yeah. And the normies, I mean, like, who wants to be a normie, really, you know?
Well, that's actually an interesting point, because I was reading, there was a post on Facebook that I saw the other day that had because there's this big topic of people are trying to normalize mental health or neurodiversity or disability in general. They're trying to normalize it. And someone was commenting, why are we trying to normalize something that we just simply need acceptance for? Because we don't need to be the same as the people that don't have this stuff. We need to stay unique, but have them understand what we're going through. And I was wondering your take on that. If any of what I just said made sense.
It totally did. No, it totally did. And I've seen a huge trend in the time that I was diagnosed 20 years ago to now, in that, you know, a label like bipolar, for example, people didn't know what it was. Exactly. In 2001. They had no idea what you were talking about. And you know, me and my family, we had to read up on it. We had to get the books and we had to like really research. But at this point, people, you know, will say like the weather is bipolar, or they'll use it as like a euphemism, or they will self-describe as any of the labels. Maybe they're a little less harsh, like ADD or OCD, or, you know, any of the labels. They're saying, well, that's acting up, that my ADD is acting up. But to use those diagnostic labels, you have to understand what they're referring to, right?
Right.
But people have become so much more educated on each term, each diagnostic term, and there was a major turning point for me and my label that I championed in about 2008 when I was doing my one-man show based on the experience of bipolar. It was like, this is a whole hour of me talking about what it's like. And at the same time, there was this Broadway show called Next to Normal, which was about a woman who has it, and it's about her family, and she's seeing the psychiatrist, and she's kind of going through all those things that someone goes through. But it was kind of like a moment for the term, because before that there was no show about it, there was no media about it. And then you have other TV shows that kind of have, where it's not the main thing, but it's like the character has it, and you just understand this is what she's kind of going through. And so, there's so much more of an awareness, and people have the option to kind of use those labels or not. You know,
that's what's happening with autism as well, because I'm autistic, right? Mm-hmm. But up until I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the only representation we had was Rain Man, right? Yeah. Which is a very small percentage of the autism spectrum that are actually in that situation. So whenever I said I'm autistic, people would say, "But you do eye contact," or "But you're able to hug," or whatever. So, I mean, it was very narrow, the public description of autism, whereas now we're seeing all these shows where there's somebody on the autism spectrum and he's different from the person on the autism spectrum in another show.
Well, it's also kind of I've talked about this in a previous episode about the marketability of disorders and syndromes, and it's kind of like with Tourette syndrome, the marketability is the swearing tic, the coprolalia, which I don't have. Coprolalia, I do have that one. Palalia, but it's like with autism. I mean, everyone sees like these terrifying, they saw like these like terrifying ad campaigns from like Autism Speaks, where they're showing all the negative sides of it. And with bipolar disorder, like we just hear about the over the top manic episodes, but we don't hear about that middle ground area. We don't hear about, what actually goes on outside of the mania, or even what really happens during the mania. It's all the scary stuff. And then people go, oh, it's just, we've got our ups and downs. And it's, it becomes this whole thing of how can we market it? And then people don't get the actual information.
Well, I think you both bring up a good point to lead into, what is the spectrum and people like understanding the spectrum, because as I understand it, there's autism, but there's the autistic spectrum where you fall somewhere on the line, and it's like, are you making eye contact, or can you hug someone, or like there's all these different gradients of what your functionality is, how you appear, how hard it is to do tasks and things like that. And that was the thing that I brought up, right away, is that, there's bipolar, but there's a bipolar spectrum. And the interesting thing is you have all these conditions and they kind of circle around each other in these rainbows of spectrums, because we all have even more than one thing that we're dealing with. We all have a couple of these conditions there's happening all the time. And we, the spectrums kind of flow in and out, kind of like a rainbow wheel of, whatever is happening to you that day. And it makes it really interesting about like, well, what are these conditions? And so when you identify, or when you've been given this label or you have it, it's really, I think considering the spectrum is like a really big part of realizing.
I'm glad I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of these things overlap, as you said. I mean, ADHD and OCD, for example, and autism and ADHD, and bipolar disorder with like regular, within parentheses, depression or hyperactivity disorder or whatever. These things overlap in so many areas. That's why it's also pretty hard to get a diagnosis, at least here in Iceland, because I mean, I had to go into a full-blown manic episode where I totally lost connection with reality, and I thought I was an alien sent here to father the next Messiah. So I was, in essence, your father.
You're my dad in the future, like Terminator 2. You've been
exactly right. Exactly right.
I actually sent you. I sent you in the past, and now it's you. I sent my father to find me.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought up the spectrum aspect of this, also because of the fact that, I mean, talking about bipolar disorder, I mean, one thing that doesn't even really get like, I mean, until I met you, Stefnir, and I talked to Nick, and several of our friends who have bipolar disorder, I didn't know the difference between bipolar 1, bipolar 2. I didn't know the difference between manic episode and hypomania. I mean, there really are so many factors to this that, and everyone experiences them differently. And it really is like a big spectrum.
It totally is. And, I was talking with this person who they identified as bipolar, but they had never had a full-blown manic episode, or they had never been hospitalized. And to me, I was like, well, how do you know you have it? I mean, what happened for you? I mean, I was curious. I was like, what makes you think you have it? Did you tell some stories to a doctor? And the doctor was like, it sounds like you have this, because that's really, your experience is all you have,
Well, that's kind of the interesting thing of the self-diagnosing that's becoming especially popular today, and like the wording of this. This was something I was actually thinking about like 2 weeks ago. Is someone I had on the podcast recently was talking about people identifying as disabled, and I don't. I'm very much the type of person that like I'm very supportive of people like when they say, you know, like I'm disabled or I identify as disabled, I go straight to you know, being supportive and all of that stuff. But the wording seems kind of off to me personally about identifying, because to me I wonder, does that say that you are or like that you've gotten diagnosed, you went through the process and you know for a fact, or it's just like you were saying, like you've had experiences, but it's not really clear as to if that's actually what it is.
That's a great point, because on every form that I fill out, there's, you know, for they ask your race, they ask your gender, they ask your age, and those are all things that have like 5 to 10 responses on any of those questions, and then there's always the box: do you have a disability or not?
Right?
Are you disabled? And I always check yes, because bipolar is one of the disabilities that is listed in the lists of disability. You know, it's what they're talking about. You know, they're talking about that. But in a lot of cases, if you're just depressed or you just have anxiety, you don't qualify for that list. It's really interesting. Like there's like to me, like some of the depression episodes I've been through, they're some of the most disabling, where I can't get up and I can't do anything. But for certain state money and for certain, like, you know, classifying, you can't just say, oh, I'm depressed and get that checkbox. So there is, I mean, I always think of myself as having a disability. I just think of it as limitations, really, you know?
Right. Cause I last year, like, or every so often I get I have, like this experience where basically like I get like this like massive rush of energy, and I get like it feels like my brain is moving at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I remember last year when this happened the last time, I started actually like thinking about my friends that have talked about hypomania, and I started wondering, was this hypomania? Because I would explain to them what was going on, and they'd say, oh yeah, that's similar to my experiences. But I never said that it was exactly what I had, because I wasn't sure, you know. And then finally, recently, I spoke to a therapist, and she said no, because it, like, the longest it's lasted was like 8 hours, and she said with hypomania, you have to have had an experience of it for like several days for it really to be classified as hypomania. Otherwise, it might be related to my ADD. So, and it might just be, you know, like unprocessed energy or something like that. But this is why, like, I wouldn't say that I have hypomania just because I experienced something that seemed similar.
Yeah, like you drink a double espresso and you feel like jazz, and you're like, this could be hypomania, you know? No, it's caffeine. It's just caffeine, you know. It only lasts 4 to 5 hours, and then it's over, you know.
Yeah.
After I was talking to the therapist, I was just like, oh man, like if I told this to my friends that have had hypomania, they might look at me and be like, yeah, dude, you don't know what it's really like.
Yeah, you had a good day, dude. That's all.
I got a lot of I did get a lot of cleaning done. I will say
got a lot of cleaning done.
That was definitely so I guess there was a benefit of it. But I did want to I wanted to, before I forget here, because something that I'm very, very fascinated by with manic episodes is the idea of, now when you had the manic episode, did you at any point in the beginning like kind of get like an awareness that it was starting, or was it just that kind of click and then you instantly had a different thought process?
No. It's all kind of a ramp up, you know, and it's like, what is your stimulus? Like I was talking about caffeine and stuff. Mm-hmm. For me, the stimulus was like weed and alcohol, and also like, you know, sex, and like the first time experiencing true love. You know, this is high school. Remember, this is like the very first time you're experiencing these things. And that all those things combination was such a stimulus rush that, you know, my high lasted, you know, a week. You know, it was like a week. And so I just, every day I would sleep less and less, and I would get more kind of untethered, and my thoughts were becoming like more like hallucinations. And then at the end, I was actually hallucinating. You know, at the last part of it, I was actually like I didn't know if it was a day or a night, or if it was, you know, this wall was really there. I was walking through it. So there was all that kind of hallucinating with the impetus, you know, with the start of that being a week before, with just like, hey, I'm in love and this is great, and I feel really strongly for this person, and I have all these creative ideas, and I'm listening to my favorite music, and, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, there are steps to it. You know, there are gradients to it, and I think what's really important to remember is you can have a really good day. We're talking about, you said you just had a good day. You can have a really good day and kind of like surf that right up to the edge of hypomania, and then be like, okay, I gotta go to sleep. So I'm going to take my meds, or I'm going to do whatever I need, and like get a full night of sleep, and then get up again and do it again. That's kind of what being a creative is. You know, it's kind of like riding that wave and pushing up against the limit of like, you know, okay, it's been a couple of days, or it's been 8 hours. I've had my 8 hours of fun. Now it's time to clock out and, you know, mellow out a little bit. So
yeah, the trouble with manic episodes is that you don't see the point, or I at least didn't see the point of, hey, dude, maybe it's time to, you know, jump in the jacuzzi to relax a little bit, or maybe, you know, take a nap that lasts maybe 8 hours or whatever, where I just stopped sleeping.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned that like about the sleep, that it's kind of like with Stefnir, he described it as like he kind of felt like it was like unnecessary, like you didn't need sleep anymore.
Yeah. And one of the thoughts you have when you're in that state, I think this is universal, is that you think the high will last forever.
Right.
I mean, for whatever reason, that's the first thing that pops into my brain. It's like, oh, I feel so good. I felt good for 2.5 days. This is going to last forever. You know, it's like,
absolutely.
And there's no realization that's just like the stock market or anything else. You know, what goes up must come down. You know, it's like,
and does it ever come down, dude?
Yeah, it comes down hard. It comes down hard.
So is it kind of like this seems like kind of like a negative version of this, but like, is it kind of like a panic attack in that sense that like it starts up and you feel like it's just never going to stop?
Pretty much,
like you were saying.
Yeah, but now this is why manic episodes scare me now and keep me in check, sort of taking my meds and taking care of myself, you know, meditating and making sure I'm asleep at night and awake during the day, is that I know about the crash now. So when I start feeling hyper and I get scared, because I mean, am I going up? Am I going up? Will this reach that fucking, precipice? You know, will I go over the top? I'm
the one with Tourette's, and you're the one that swears.
True.
Yeah. And it's not the same amount of time either. Like for me, it was like a week of mania and like 6 months of depression afterwards. Like it was like a lot more depression, a lot more time being depressed than using those endorphins and stuff.
Yeah.
And the mania.
Yeah.
You know.
And I wanted to kind of I want to talk about the TED Talk that you did, because this was actually how I learned about you was I watched the TED Talk that you did on being crazy enough, and first of all, amazing talk. I loved every minute of it. But what I loved so much about it was the comedic aspect of it, because and I recall you said in an interview as well about the fact that like you feel like comedy when it comes to mental illness is underrated. Like it's kind of like, you know, it's like you're expected to be so informative, but you kind of lack that like personal aspect of it. And I loved how you went about that in your TED Talk. Kind of putting that motive of like, this is how it relates to me, not how it relates to a textbook.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of doing a talk instead of doing a set is that if your jokes don't work, it just becomes educational.
Yeah.
You know? That's kind of how I view whenever I do like a thing and it was at like a wellness center and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try my routine out. And if it wasn't whatever, for no fault of your own, if the functionality of your audience wasn't that high or it just wasn't landing, you kind of just spin it to like, all right, well, I said that thing and now I'm going to unpack that a little bit more. And so, every teacher has some jokes, but not every teacher is that funny. So, you kind of realize that whatever you're saying and your message is still you being a speaker, and it's still you saying your points of view and speaking about something, standing for something, having a point of view, getting the word out there, even if it's telling your own experience. So I always, I try to have a few laugh lines in there, but ultimately what people want is kind of like an inspirational, they want to know something about themselves by listening to you,
They want to connect.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you brought up like when it gets like super serious, it's like a talk, but when it or like the difference between a talk and a set, like a comedy set. And I noticed that because we like this show started as a stand-up comedy show. And like whenever Stefnir would go on, sometimes his stuff would be so fascinating that people wouldn't laugh, but he'd have them like in the palm of his hand and no one would leave and they'd love his set. And then at the end of it, I would jokingly go on and be like, so let's hear it for Stefnir's TED Talk.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a number of times.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also a difference between the comic and the solo performer, right? Someone who's going to be theatrical and like every solo show, every piece of theater, it's not just funny. There's funny moments, but you actually want to say something, you want to move someone, you want to speak to the heart, you want to say something that's going to really affect someone too. So every play, every piece of theater I've gone to, there's a whole arc of emotions that happens to you. It's not just one dimensional.
Right. And you with the comedy, and everything that you do, you're very, very open about, bipolar disorder and all of that. When did, I'm going to ask this because we get asked this like every single time we get talked to, what got you comfortable with talking about it? Was there a specific moment or did you just decide one day, you know what, I'm just going to be as open about it. I'm going to advocate for acceptance and awareness. And that's just kind of how it went.
Well, it became my mission really early on, but I was writing about it as it was happening the year after. And I think the very next year I penned a one-act play.
Okay.
Still in that theater program that was about the experience, being medicated and going through the doctors, that whole. So right after I was like, all right, I'm going to write this down. But it took me about 5 years to kind of say, this is my thing, or I'm going to speak openly about it. And, and then it took 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years from that experience to get good at talking about it, So, because you want the perspective on that experience, when something traumatic has happened to you, yeah, you're going to tell someone about it right that week, but to make it into your thing and to speak openly about it and write about it, yeah, you want some perspective on it too. So it takes some years to get that, like, okay, here's where my overarching curve, here's where my narrative curve and narrative arc lies,
Did you find because of doing doing comedy and doing stand-up, did you ever find that, because comedians always have opinions on everyone, and did you ever find that any comedians were telling you to not stick to just talking about bipolar disorder or mental health, to kind of broaden it so that you don't only become the bipolar comedian?
Well, yeah, I put myself out there as the bipolar comedian pretty early, but I had limitation. I wouldn't talk about that every time. Like if I was doing 5 to 10 minutes somewhere, I would kind of stick to kind of other topics, the weirdness of me in my mind. I would kind of like not talk about that. But if someone had me for a half hour, 45 minutes, I would kind of bring up those themes and kind of do that narrative arc. But eventually what ended up happening is the bigger shows, the bigger paid shows, the bigger speaking shows, they wanted funny, but they also, it was like a mental health conference or something, you know? And they were getting at me just like you guys are for my topic, I wasn't just another comedian. I was a mental health comedian. So that's why they were interested in hiring me.
What's interesting about that is I've done we've done corporates, and we've done both regular corporates, and we've done the ones for organizations and schools where it's more for the awareness side of it. And I find that we ended up getting more calls to speak at schools than we actually did for corporates, because people were wanting the awareness side of things. And I also found those way more I kind of found them more enjoyable. I kind of appreciated them a lot more because, people were there exactly for what you're giving them. I find sometimes with regular corporates, it's like a swing and a miss. And then the whole rest of the corporate, you're trying to be like, well, hey, George from accounting, let's talk about that guy. It becomes kind of like either you get them on your side with the regular corporate or you don't.
Yeah. And sometimes you're hired just as entertainment too. They're not thinking about what you're actually going to say, which is that fine line when you're kind of, doing something for a corporation. It's like, does my material align with the mission of this organization, or is it not, is it not going to work? So I think that's something to consider. And with when you're around kids, when you're around high school, college, you automatically take up a different tone because
lots of swearing.
Lots of swearing, but also the thing that I wanted to address is you're kind of the mentor. Even if it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to show you how cool my profession is and how my stuff. It's you're still showing them that this is a career path potentially for you. So that's right. That comes into it.
You're that funny uncle showing them the way.
Funny uncles, man. I go as Uncle so and so in a lot of families,
Right.
There's that guy he's by the grill, but he's not actually grilling. The dad is grilling, and obviously. I'm by the grill, and I'm just kind of keeping the dad entertained and
shooting the shit,
saying some things. Yeah, exactly. Uncle so and so.
I've been called Uncle Inappropriate.
Uncle Inappropriate's good. I have a bunch of Uncle pseudonyms, Uncle J and Uncle J Dubs and stuff. But there are other Daddy Joshes here and other Uncle Joshes. So, and then it's Uncle J. There's a lot of J's. So you have to define yourself. What kind of uncle are you? What's your uncle pseudonym?
Now, are there a lot of J's as in the letter or J's as in joint? Because that could be a whole different topic.
I'm thinking Jay's is the first name. Jay's, a lot of Jasons, a lot of James, and they want to be Uncle J too. So when you start as Uncle J, you better be the most frequented Uncle J to get that title,
Right. Right. By the way, before I lose my thought, while we're talking about the comedy aspect of things, with your TED Talk, how did the fanny pack come about? I mean, you had this great moment where in the beginning, it's like you start beatboxing, you take off the fanny pack, put it on the ground, and then by the end of it, you're picking it back up. And I was like, that was the greatest timeline of that fanny pack. I've never experienced a better order for a fanny pack.
Yeah. The fanny pack. I mean, in the days of my solo shows, that was a staple of my costume, and each show had a different style of fanny pack. And there's shows where my first television appearance, I had kind of like a safari fanny pack. It was kind of like a jungle themed. And then for that show, it was a sparkly. It was like a gold sparkly.
Right.
And then the fanny packs evolved. I had a Mexican rainbow fanny pack with a speaker in it. I had, and people knew me as the fanny pack guy. And I had part of my site eventually that hey, send me in a fanny pack and I'll wear it, you know? So like, just
cool.
send me your random fanny pack and I'll put it in my next video. We'll feature your fanny pack, you know, whatever you wish.
It almost becomes like something you don't want to get rid of once you start having fun with it. Like I've done so many jokes about like on stage about looking like Jesus that like last year I was like, should I shave my beard off? And I did it during the lockdown, but then I was just like, wait a minute, but if I shave my beard off, that gets rid of half my material.
Yeah. You could say I used to look like Jesus, but now I look like this.
I did start doing like the Judas reference. I was like the man who betrayed Jesus.
Yeah.
But did you so you're basically, I mean, you just enjoyed the fanny pack, so it became not just like a look that people expected, but you actually enjoyed it as well.
Well, I was it was a functional thing that I would use in my day, but I would also kind of, it was a prop, and I would kind of pull other props out of it. I would have like pieces of fruit in there, different sizes of bananas, whatever thing you needed to come out of the fanny pack. I'd have different things that would appear out of the fanny pack. So it would hold fruit and things.
Wait, so you're okay with bananas now? Because I heard or like I was reading about Summon the Silly on your page. It was apparently banned from YouTube because it was too controversial and offensive to bananas.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a
but
longer
you're okay
story.
with bananas now.
There's a longer story. I mean, if you actually read that deeply into my bio, you would see that I actually dressed up as a banana and I had a banana suit. So that was more of the silliness and more of that. But I did have a pivotal piece of spoken word that involved comedy and beatbox, and it was kind of the early side of all those things in one. And it was called Summon the Silly, and it was about, dropping your seriousness and coming together and dancing and enjoying the moment, enjoying life in this kind of, in the time that we lived during that Summon the Silly piece. And why it got banned, actually, you would like this, is technical, but I put my album with the same audio on iTunes, and then they took down the YouTube with the same audio. They said, no, you don't have the rights to your own material. You don't have the rights to your own video. Yeah. So it did technically get banned from YouTube, and it's not on my YouTube anymore because they took it down. I mean, YouTube was like, yeah, this is copyrighted material. You don't have the rights to do this.
So you got a copyright strike on your own material.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And how would they know? How would they know it's me? I mean, it's my name, but I mean, it goes through the algorithm and they're like, all right, take this down,
That's wild. Like, because I've noticed that, like, I had, I've accidentally, posted a clip from a comedy show where, like a Red Hot Chili Peppers song is playing and like right before I go on stage, and then I got a copyright strike. But I had a couple years ago, I posted something and I got a copyright strike, and I'm going through it and I'm like, it's just me talking. I mean, like, what am I getting a copyright strike on? I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe my squeak actually sounded so much like Mickey Mouse that they were like, you do not have the rights to the Mickey Mouse squeak. You can't post this on social media. And I'm like, damn it.
I don't understand what gets called out or not, because so much music is on there where it's not the original owner. So, I mean, you can find any song on there, and it's not legit that it's on there. So why is my dancing to this, having a song in the background, why does that get a strike and everything else doesn't? Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, you get enough bananas complaining about it, anything will be taken off the internet.
Yeah. It depends on what kind of bananas, because there was a craze for the baby bananas. They're a little sweeter, and I got these red bananas, but they're still kind of ripe, So I have to grill them up, It's do a little plantain, fry them up a little bit. So there's a lot of ways you can go with bananas,
I feel like every banana we get here in Iceland is a red banana, but that's just because it's not ripe anymore.
Oh yeah, red banana means it's too ripe.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think it's a type. These are from Ecuador. I think it's a type of banana, but they're so unripe. They're so raw that I just, I have to fry them.
Ah, okay.
Ah, that's what it is.
Yeah, because everything gets like shipped into Iceland because it's an island. So we end up with like all like avocados are such a 50-50 here. Like you get a batch of avocados and like half of one will be good. But the rest of them, it's like, it looked good at the store.
Yeah, on the way from the store, it'll go too ripe.
Yeah. But before we get to the end of this, because I wanted to make sure that I talked about your coaching, because this is something that you do, and I wanted to make sure we talk about this. How did you get into that?
Well, yeah. I ended up one of my work professions was coaching in the mental health, behavioral health system, and developing, a kind of mentorship and also kind of guidance to people that are just getting their wellness together, or are creatives, or want to do something, positive with their life, that are on the spectrum, whatever spectrum that is. And that job lasted about a year, and then I ended up doing, starting a private practice to continue that work because I loved it so much. And I get people that are, content creators, or they are authors or musicians, and they want to kind of use their skills to kind of better their creative talents. And also I help use creative gifts as a wellness tool and as something we can talk about to kind of unpack, someone's wellness.
So, So it wasn't just in your TED Talk. You do actually try to help people turn their mental illness into mental skillness. It was also a 360 because I mentioned that in the beginning of it.
You did. You came back full around. You came back full circle there.
I love when that happens. Like it's never intentional. It's never written down. It's just I end up like right as I get that moment, I take it and then I'm like, I feel like George W. Bush when he said something that was actually correct English, and he just celebrated so much internally.
He didn't know he could do it. He got it right, and he was like, "Oh man,
he got it right," and he's just like, "I have to celebrate internally." He gets this big smile on his face.
Yeah.
But so how does someone get connected with you for the coaching?
They can find me at my website, which is thejoshuawalters.com. I also set up another, entity, which is in regards to podcasting, storytelling, and coaching, which is called mad1.me, Mad1 Media. So you can find me at those sites. Very Googleable. My information's out there, and you can get in contact with me that way.
Excellent. Well, first of all, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It's been a hoot and a half.
And Stefnir, thanks for being my co-host.
No worries, man. Anytime.
And I guess I don't have to. Since you just did it, I don't have to do the whole thing of where can people find out more information about you because you just gave it. But with Stefnir, you can check out Stefnir on Facebook at Stefnir Comedy. You have an Instagram at Stefnir Benedictson, the only Stefnir Benedictson if you can figure out how to spell it. And then with me, you can find me at Dan Zarin Comedy on all the socials. And now for the part that no one has been waiting for, the outro. So if you want to find out more information about the show,
about 10
you can
seconds
find us
into
at
this, everybody's off,
My Voices
so it doesn't really
After
matter.
on Facebook, Instagram. We have Twitter at MVHT Show.
I mean, we already lost Josh, I guess.
Yeah.
We have MVHTshow.com. Check out if you want to, if you have any suggestions for the podcast or any of that stuff. Check out MVHT Podcast discussion group on Facebook. I get bored doing this. I get to the point where like I've done this so many times, and I know no one's listening. Like I know everyone is just like, okay, so we heard the guest, we heard all the information that we need to know. Now why are we listening to this guy more? But if you want to listen to more of me, we are available on Spotify and all of that stuff. You can check out if you liked this podcast, give us a 5-star review. We love them. If you hated the podcast though, you absolutely hated Stefnir, or you just really don't like the squeaking, leave us a 1-star review. Let us know why. We won't change anything, but we do appreciate your 1-star reviews because we like to know why you didn't like us. Because we all have anxiety and it does not leave. It's so much fun. Other than that, this episode's been brought to you by Gamesless Studio, where we're recording the Secret Cellar Iceland's first and only comedy club, and Smarty's Volcano Sauce is the greatest hot sauces I've ever had in my life.
They are spectacular.
They are spectacular. Other than that, I'm just going to skip right to thank you all so much for listening, and check out new episodes every Tuesday.